Hi, my name's Kristie Flannery and I'm a Killam postdoctoral fellow here at the University of British Columbia. I organised this workshop on navigating PARES, or the Spanish government's web archive portal, because like many of you, my plans to do research this summer were cancelled due to the global pandemic. Today's workshop will offer some hints and tricks on how to use the new PARES 2.0 platform for those of us who are more experienced with the old PARES. It also offers a crash course for newbies who are doing research using PARES for the first time. I invited Scott Cave to run this workshop. Scott is an expert in the history of early Florida and the Caribbean, and his research has won prizes, including the prize for the best article published in the Americas. He's also famous among historians of Latin America for writing the Taming PARES manual along with Ashley Dean. I'm grateful to the University of British Columbia's History Department for supporting this workshop today, and I'd also like to say a special thank you to Antonio Sanchez de Mora from the AGI, or Archivo de Indias in Sevilla, for also participating and answering many of our questions. Thank you for all of you who've joined from near and far across very different time zones. Thank you.
So before we get started, I would ask you to go to the website scottcave.net, which houses my old PARES guide, and which I'll be referring to kind of throughout this talk, and to leave that browser window open so we can refer to it. From the lineup of people who showed up, it seems like a lot of y'all are fairly experienced PARES users, that you are tenure-track faculty or people who have been researching for several years. I know that's not the case for everyone, but I thought I would start out the talk by saying, what are the main differences that I see between the older PARES and the newer PARES? The first thing you probably noticed when you opened PARES is that it was if you're an English speaker, was that parts of the interface were in English. So your browser has a small file that gives information about your computer to a website, and that will determine how the website localizes. So if your default language on your computer is English, it will default to English. If it is in any other language, I believe it defaults to Spanish. So if you're more comfortable using it in Spanish or English, you can just change the system language in the settings on your device. Another thing that's interesting is that it's also localized in the different dialects spoken in Spain, so in Catalan and Gallego. And so that's something that, if you speak that language, or if you're a Portuguese speaker, you could possibly put the website in Gallego if you're more comfortable with that. The other thing I would point out that I would think is as a sort of major thematic change in yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak of it. Raul has pointed out that those are not dialects of Spanish, that they are their own languages, in fact. I apologize for that mistake. But the sort of sea change that I would point out to you guys is that is to think about PARES 2 as a website versus a web service. And what do I mean by that? A web service, an example of a web service is like when you log onto your power company's website to pay your bill. It's an interface to information they want to give you. If you sent me the link that displayed your power bill, I wouldn't be able to look at your power bill. And PARES 1 worked very much in that way, right? Like there weren't stable links. It is the website that David just posted in the chat. is where you want to look. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so PARES 1 was based on a sort of one-time interaction with the website, and PARES 2 is, this metaphor is a little complicated, but let me abandon it. I apologize, guys. The real strength of PARES 2 is that anything that you are looking at is a link that you can copy and paste and access later. So if you find a document that you want to access, you can copy that URL, paste it into a document, and it will work forever, or at least so far as I am aware. And that's a major change, right? Because it makes it much easier to save documents, to record documents, and to kind of play around with the website. And I'll kind of get into that in a little bit. The other major change is the addition of autoridades, or authorities, which is essentially the card catalog for different archives, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The other thing that's handy for people who don't have Spanish language keyboards is that it no longer discriminates between different accented letters. So if you forget to type an ñ or put an accent on a vowel, there's no sort of punishment for doing that. So I wanted to start kind of talking about what is the point of searching PARES. I know that sounds sort of highfalutin, I guess, or sort of abstract, but I want to talk about how to approach this website. And that is to not think of PARES as Google per se, but to think of it as a map to places that you might want to go. Because the indexing on the website, because we're dealing with images that have not yet been transcribed, the indexing isn't perfect. And so you have to think in the long term about where the things that you're finding in search can take you. And so I'm going to start screen sharing so we can look at some things together. And the first is this very dumb meme I made, which is about how to sort of, how you, as you work with PARES, will sort of move through different ways of interacting with the website. And so you'll start and you'll just do a simple search and you'll find the things that are like linked to from that entry. And as you move along, you'll find ways to find things that aren't indexed, that aren't immediately obvious. And so I want to talk to you about like how to kind of go through that process. And I made this in part because it echoes my experience using the website, which is I started as an undergrad researching a mission to Spanish Florida by a friar called Luis Cancer. And he's an interesting guy, we can talk about him later. But at first I only found things that were obviously digitized and things that were easy to search for. And by the time I went to the AGI in 2015, I knew where to look. For example, I knew that he was in Seville in the late 1540s. And so I just started looking at documents from the Casa de la Contratación in 1547, 1548, and 1549. And I found more and more about him, even though that wasn't linked in the index. So I sort of think of this process as a move from searching to roaming in the the sources that, roaming around the sources that you find. Like if there's a source somewhere in Differente, you can look in the pages around that to see if there's other sources. And then eventually you're going to move on to prospecting. You're going to know the kinds of places where you would find things. So I want to talk, the rest of the talk is sort of working through different ways to search using the PARES site. So let's start at the PARES homepage. And we're going to go to the Búsqueda Avanzada. That's the page I usually like to start at. Can everyone see okay? Is it high? Okay.
Looks fine.
Okay, now that I've zoomed in, is it a little more visible for people? I'm going to assume yes. I don't see the.
I still see, Scott, the meme that you posted.
Oh, okay. So let's change the screen I'm sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone can see the Búsqueda Avanzada advanced search.
It just shows like the top of the website, not the whole page. Weirdly.
Okay, so I've zoomed out. Can everyone still read the words on their device?
Yes.
Okay. So let's search. We're going to search for that friar that I was talking about earlier. This is an example of how to do a basic search using the an advanced search using the advanced search interface. So we're going to look for Luis Cancer.
Scott, I can't see I can't see the full page. I don't know if other people. Yeah, the top of it's only showing like the top of the page, like a search bar.
Huh. Crap.
There we go. Working. Oh, lost again.
Had it for a second.
Is it, maybe it's zooming into the area I'm interacting with?
I know, it just shows the search bar and then it clicked out to the full screen for a moment.
Okay, are we looking at the full screen now?
No.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Oh, lost again. I don't know. It clicks back and forth.
Okay, are we looking at the full website now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to search for Luis Cancer. We're going to start the search as simply as we can without adding any information. And his name actually has an accent over the A, but like I said, now the website doesn't discriminate between accented and unaccented letters. So there's no need to worry about that. Okay, so I know that he's a friar active in the 16th century, and a lot of this looks like archival material from Aragon and Catalonia. So I want to find a way to kind of screen some of those things out. So we'll type Luis Cancer again. We're going to reload the website because it's acting up a little bit. Okay, so we have Luis Cancer, and I only want to see things from the AGI. And I use the filter by archive section of the search bar to restrict that. And I know he died in 1549, so I'm going to end the search time frame on January 1st, 1555. Just because sometimes the dates can be a little bit sloppy. Notes get added to documents later or something, and so you want a little bit of slack when you're picking date ranges. And so I'm getting an error message. So I believe the site wants me to enter a start date. So we're going to use January 1st, 1500. Okay, so now we've restricted down to things held in the AGI in between 1500 and 1555. So we know we're much warmer. We can also go back and further restrict it to sections within the AGI. I'm going to clear the form. And where it says fonds, that is fondo, that would be fondos in Spanish. It's the subsections of the archive. So if I only want to see things in say maps, I can restrict it that way, or I picked papeles de Cuba. But so to talk through every aspect on this page, the search by words are pretty familiar to anyone who's used a library search, I believe. You can you can restrict things, you can add things, you have control over how it's searching. To be frank, I don't yet understand the description indices part of the page. I'm still learning this along with you guys. The filter by archive section allows you to pick an archive and then a subsection of that archive. Date is self-explanatory. Medium does not come up very much in the AGI because most things are normal paper. And then digitization, you can control whether you pull up everything, only the digitized documents, or the digitized and undigitized documents. And then the reference number is if you have a citation or a section of the archive that you know something is in, you can restrict it that way. And we're going to get into that later in this discussion. So we're going to go to the search results for Luis Cancer. We're going to restrict it to the AGI. And we're going to search. Now, you'll see in this list of results that there are some things with a camera icon and some things that just have the little arrow. And so the things that have a camera icon are things that you can click directly through to. Like this is Cancer's journal from his mission. And this is sort of the first source I worked on when I was working on my project. But what you will learn with time is that just because something doesn't have a camera icon showing doesn't mean that it isn't digitized. So this source, for example, is a financial document about his mission. And it says that this specific page is not digitized. But if you look at, you see where my cursor is right now? And I'll explain how to do this later. If you pull up Indifferente 1964 L10, you can look at that page. You'll just have to find it yourself. And so don't always trust what the website says is digitized and undigitized, because honestly, most of the documents I found for this project are things that were not digitized, but were actually digitized. Okay, so I'm going to look at the chat to make sure that everyone is following along. Okay. Okay, so everyone's sort of good. Kristie, can you confirm? Kristie. Okay, everyone's good. Thanks, guys. So let's look at the authority search. And this is where I'm going to kind of be slightly less helpful to the people who are working on European topics. Because to be frank, it has been my experience that the authority search works better with the archives that deal with mainland Europe. That is not to diminish the AGI, but it's just a sort of function of what the AGI is, right? Like they have incoming mail from all over the world, from villages with indigenous names. If you look at a volume of Indifferente, which is like incoming and outgoing mail for the Casa de la Contratación, there's a letter from Florida right next to a letter from the Philippines. And so indexing that material is more difficult. My wife just got home from work, so you may hear some rustling. But it's very good for as a place to start, and if you're working within those European archives. So, for example, one of my chapters is about the Canary Islands, and I've used this to look for slavery in the Canary Islands, which is, I believe, a heading that the Archivo General de Simancas has created. But it's still very helpful for sort of in these topics. So let's look for the Nahua village of Huejotzingo, which is sort of in Puebla. And we're just going to do a simple search to start. And so it brings up the sort of card catalog entry for Huejotzingo. And so we have 5 documents in the Archivo Histórico Nacional. We can take a look at what those are. And it looks like these are genealogy and possibly proof of merit petitions. And then we have 60 documents from the Archivo General de Indias. And so as we scroll through, many of these volumes are for Correos, which is the volume that deals with the mail service for the empire. And as we keep scrolling down, and go to page 2, we'll end up in Contratación, which has to deal with Casa de la Contratación. And then eventually we'll end up in Mexico, like the volume Mexico. And if you look, all of these are from a few volumes from 16th century Mexico, because this volume has been broken up, digitized, and indexed. So the card catalog, like, it has been cataloged very well. And so, like, these documents, if you were working on a project in a Huejo Cinco, are a good place to start, but you do have to recognize that these are not all of the Huejo Cinco sources. They're just the ones that have been extensively indexed. So to go back to that interface page, you can also restrict by date. You can restrict by authority type, which is like different levels of indexing, family names, the institution that that document deals with, and things like that. So that's frankly all I have to say about autoridades. And if anyone has any questions about autoridades, I'll try to answer them, but otherwise I'll just move on to the next thing. Yeah, so Shai, we will get to the digitized, undigitized, finding secretly digitized sources. We're actually, that's the next thing we're going to do. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to move to a PowerPoint that I created, because there's a way, there's a sort of method to how you pull up things from citations. So share screen, and we're going to go to my PowerPoint. Okay, so and this is how you pull up a document from a citation. This is also how you find, how you would find that in different. My mouse died there for a second, sorry. So this is a citation from an article that my friend wrote that was published in Ethnohistory, like 2012. And it was of interest to my dissertation, but just searching this phrase won't pull up a document in PARES. And so what you have to do is go through the process of converting this citation into the way that PARES wants you to search, if that makes sense. And so I'll kind of illustrate the process here. So first, we want to just move to what I call in my first PARES guys, the coordinates. So we know that the document that my friend was looking at is in the Santo Domingo 49 volume, Ramo 1, Numero 2, Folio 1R. I accidentally, so if we skip down to the third item, the coordinate system that PARES uses does not recognize spaces. And it's actually gotten much more forgiving about those things, and I'll show you that in a second. But so what I did, so I've done two things by this third entry. I've converted folio to just the letter F, which is how PARES refers to page numbers. And I've removed all the spaces. And then in the final step, I make sure to refer to make sure that this first section is in keeping with how it is listed in the PARES index. So here, I'm going to share a different screen. We're going to go to my PARES guide, Taming PARES, and we're going to a table of AGI internal citation style. And this is a list of every division of the AGI typed as the website wants you to type it, if that makes sense. And so, for example, for the portrait gallery of Cuban governors, this is how you would start the coordinates. Or in the case of Santo Domingo, you use an underscore between Santo and Domingo. So I am going to copy this coordinate the coordinates that I converted. And I'm going to go to the search page. I'm going to type that into the reference number section. And I'm going to, it's already restricted to the AGI. And I'm going to hit search. My internet is being very slow.
Scott, I have a quick question. If you didn't restrict that to the AGI, would it still work or not?
It should work if you don't restrict it to the AGI, because there's not a Santo Domingo section in, you know, Simancas or whatever. And yeah, it at least used to work. I believe it still does. And so we did not find a result for that page. And so the process to get to that document is to start deleting one coordinate at a time. So I'm going to delete the F1R and search for that again. And so now we can look at the volume that contains the letter that I was looking for. And so to go back, earlier we were looking for I'm going to clear the search to test your question, Kristie. But I know that we were looking for indifferente 1964, comma, it was 10. And I'll make up a folio number here real quick. Oh, so you do have to select an archive to answer your question, Kristie. So we'll select AGI. We're going to search. Okay, so no data found for that particular search. So we're going to delete the coordinates. We're going to wait for my internet to speed up. Okay, no data found. So we're going to go back. We're going to delete one more set of coordinates. And so the top result is the entire volume of Indifferente 1964. And if I click through that, that contains L10 and L11. The thing that we were looking for was in L10, and then we just have to find that by the page number. And so a quick suggestion on how to make that faster. So we click on the image and that'll take us to the actual book itself. And then if we're looking for page 314, which I believe is the page we're looking for, the general formula I use to get to around that part of the volume is I double the number and I add 20. So 314 times 2 is 628 plus 20 is 648. And we're going to hit ear to go to that section. And you'll just have to start looking to find the specific page you're looking for. It'll take a little time, but you'll get used to it with time. So are we comfortable sort of how to pull up something from a citation or to look up secretly digitized things? Okay. So the last thing, and I think the one thing that's most confusing to users of vintage PARES is that it seems like Inventario Dinamico disappeared, but I can assure you that it did not. Now, Inventario Dinamico, for those of you who haven't used it, was a way to look at every single source held by an archive. And so I want to show you how to get there the long way, and then I want to show you something I've been working on to sort of speed up that process. So if you're looking for the Inventario Dinamico, go to the PARES homepage, like the starting page, and you'll click on Archivos. And then you'll click on the Censo Guia for the archive that you're looking for. And then you're going to click on Cuadro de Clasificación up here. And so that'll take you to the old Inventario Dinamico view. And a lot of what you're looking for, especially if you're working on the early to mid-colonial period, is going to be housed under Gobierno, which contains the different aliencias, and also Indiferente. But it's, I often forget how to do this, even though I'm writing a guide on how to do this. And also, you have to click a lot to get to the source that you want to get to. So I'm going to open the chat and give you a website to go to. Let me send everyone. So that website is pares.tech. So I'll do that. Let me share my screen again. Okay, my screen is shared. So I'm going to go to pares.tech. And it's loading. But I wanted to create a short URL that you could type in that would refer you to everything contained within the Inventario Dinamico for the AGI. My eventual goal is to include all the subsections within, say, the Aliencia de Charcas, and to add other archives, but I am but one man and I am not very good at coding. But this page contains direct links to descriptions of all the major sections of the AGI and also the contents of the AGI. And so with that Inventario Dinamico, you can start to look in the areas where you think sources might be. So if I was looking for material from 16th century Colombia, which is the Audiencia de Santa Fe, I'll click on Contents, and my link will take you right to that page of contents. If you can sort by reference number, and then Santa Fe has been divided into different subsections. So if I was looking for church materials, I would click on Informaciones de Oficio y Parte Eclesiásticas. And I can click on that and I can see what's contained within there. And then I can look sort of in the areas and years that I think I might find sources in. You can get a sip of water here. And so on that Taming PARES site, which is out of date in a technical sense, but has a lot of description of how the AGI works, I have a section called the Anatomy of an Audiencia. Which is housed under Anatomy of an Audiencia. And this is basically a list of the sections of an audiencia that you can pull up. Because this is how the individual archives are divided. And so if you're looking for letters from the bishop, there will be an entire section of letters to and from the bishop, divided chronologically, and you can just pull up that section. And so in writing, so when I was originally doing research, I worked a lot through search, but when I was writing my dissertation, this is how I found things. And so, you know, this is the sort of most labor-intensive way to use PARES. Not everything will be digitized, but I think as we're all sort of locked at home, we find ourselves with time to see what is digitized, what isn't, and to look through these longer volumes. And then sort of a tip, and as you get more and more involved in the research process, is I would start with the documents that you pull up through search, and then I would move into the audiencia that you're interested in. And then when you really have a lot of free time, you move into Indifferente. Because Indifferente, like I said, is mostly incoming mail or Casa de la Contratación affairs. And it's mostly very dull. It's mostly receipts and IOUs and things like that. But you will get these vivid, strange sources coming from the Indies to Europe that are preserved in this Indifferente collection. And so there aren't a lot of Indifferente sources in my dissertation, but they are some of the best sources in my dissertation. The other thing, now I'm kind of wrapping down and we're moving, or winding down, and we're moving into the Q&A, but I would encourage you to click on Notepad or Agenda, which is, I think, the secret best thing about PARES 1 or 2, which is this is one I created years ago, but it's a way to gather and compile and make notes on sources in the website interface. And there's a way to send things to the notebook/agenda from every page in the website. The thing that's really great that I use in my consulting work is you can create agendas for other people. So if you have a student who, you know, you want to look at, they want to look at documents on Huejotzingo, or you want them to look at documents from Huejotzingo for you, you can create a collection in an agenda, send them the username and password that you created, and then they can just pull up those sources very easily and very quickly. So it's a good way to store information for you, but also to share it with others. And so I'm going to stop screen sharing, and we are going to go into the Q&A. So I'll give people a few minutes to ask questions. I might leave for a minute and just say hello to my wife, but I'll be right back.
If people want to have any questions, maybe the best thing to do is put them in the chat, type them into the chat function, and then we'll see, then Scott can answer them in a moment. And a question about something we've discussed already or anything else related to interacting with the PARES website.
That's fair. Sorry, guys. I actually didn't expect my wife to be home, so I just wanted to make sure everything was okay.
No worries. Okay, so Scott, we have a couple of questions through the chat.
So let's start with Nora's question, I guess. Is that the first one?
The first question, Edward Collins asks, has anyone found a way to download an entire legajo?
Okay, this is actually a question I have for myself. As I said, I'm still in the process of learning PARES 2, and so I'm going to screen share again, and we're going to look together. Okay, so we're screen sharing. Okay, so this is that indifferente volume I was talking about. And the ways that I would download legajo chunks before to print them out or whatever, you see this printer icon here. If you click on that, we'll see what happens. Okay, so that's just gonna save the page I'm on for me. So that's one way. You can also click on the floppy disk.
Oh. Can everyone see the screen sharing? I can, but other people saying they can't. Maybe raise your hand or in the chat if you can't see the screen sharing. Okay, Edward, I think, okay, you're the only one. I don't know.
Okay, so if you click the save icon, it will save the individual page. So I'm going to go back and yeah, Edward, I don't think there's a way to batch download things anymore.
Antonio, Antonio, do you know if there's a way to download the entire legajo easily?
What do you want to do exactly?
To download the entire legajo, like 800 images in one PDF.
There was at the beginning of this 2.0 version no limit in the download of images, but as we started to work with this new PARES, we realized some days after that they again stopped to offer this option. The idea is to use the agenda, the notepad. Okay. So the idea is to save the link of the reference, in this case, in different 1964 L10, send it to the notepad so that you can use it again in your notepad. Okay. You can send some images. You can select some images and send them to your to an email, for example. That option was actually in the old version, and I think this still works.
Okay. Yeah, that's how I used to do. Is the limit still 10 images at a time for the email send?
Yes, but that's
Okay.
very, it's not something easy because there is another problem, and is that the image don't keep the name, so the signature, the reference of the document. So if you are not, if you don't type the reference in the image name, then you will have many images with no reference of signature.
Yeah.
The notepad is very useful in this case.
Yeah. So there's a person with a Hebrew name that asked a question. Is it possible in the new Inventario Dinámico to see the individual document or just the cuadro de clasificación?
Well, so do you want to say that?
Yeah, sure. You just keep clicking further and further into the hierarchy, and if the document has been broken up into individual sections, you can pull that one up. Now, if it's like Indifferente 1964 L10, you're going to need to work through the book. It just depends on the source that you are working in particular.
I just wanted to explain you one trick that we found in the archive to get to the something like the old Inventario Dinámico. As you can search in the different levels, you can use the advanced search in the filter by signature. Ask, for example, about contratación. Just contratación, the whole section.
Oh, okay.
You have, okay, and you have to be careful always in this case to click on the icon of a complete signature, because if not, it's going to be false. So if you search for contratación, okay, then you receive the screen from contratación section, and you have the option to see the higher level. If you click on higher level, then you get to the archive as a whole.
Okay.
And then you have the option to see all the units. That means the next level. So you get to the whole list of the different sections. That is what you have in the Inventario Dinámico.
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen.
Difficult, but
I'm going to share my screen to show you all how to do that.
Okay.
So
just here, there.
Yeah, so you click on location in the archive classification scheme.
Got Archivo General de Indias. Click on it. Okay. Then you have 18 units. Now you have. And you can save this because all of the links are permalinks. So you can take the link to your website, for example, or even save this search in your agenda, so that you have the Inventario Dinámico in your agenda.
Yeah, this is basically how I created that website. Just I went about it from a different direction, but yeah. So I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see the chat again.
Okay. There's a question. Nora asks, can we request digital copies of things that are microfilm but are not available, and not digitally available in the reading room? Maybe Antonio.
Yes,
Antonio.
That's a problem that we have. There was an option to see what we had in microfilm, and even to see the signature, the reference code of the microfilm. You can now, for example, search for the signature Cuba 24 if you want to see that, because that has a microfilm. I know. Cuba 24.
Okay, I'm doing that now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Full reference number. You have to click on full reference number first. No, don't worry. Just full reference number.
oh, okay.
That's all. And then search. Okay, in this case, if you go down, you will see related documentation, and then you have the sign of microfilm. Even in this case, you have the reference of the, not the whole reference of the microfilm, but the edition, the ED 143.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the previous version of PARES, we had the signature there, but not in this one. We lost it. We tried to get that from the administration of PARES, but they didn't found how to do that. That's what we have. And the problem is that you only receive this information about the related documentation in case there are. So in all the signatures that haven't the microfilm sign, you are not going to find this information, related documentation.
Okay, so what's our next question, Kristie?
There's a question by Ray Ball, asks about Simancas. The Inventario Dinámico for Simancas is not comprehensive. Is there a work around this? Does anyone know?
So Ray, in the short to medium term, I'm going to try to get a version of my site that includes Simancas online. But I don't have a better answer than that.
Simancas hasn't the whole information of the inventario this inventario dinámico that we have. So they only have information from some sections of the archive. Okay. That's the difference between Simanca and us.
Okay, and Nicholas Tsai asks regarding the date restrictions in searches, do these restrict the search to the dates on the document or on the legajo?
My sense is that it's more on the legajo level. That's why I was saying I always add 5 to 25 years in either direction when I'm trying to restrict. But Antonio might actually have a more sophisticated answer for this.
You have to realize that the dates of the legajos, most of them come from the old inventarios from the Council of the Indies. And the dates that happens in sections from the Gobierno and also in Justicia and so on, the dates are the dates of the beginning of the process in the Consejo de Indias, in the Council of the Indias. So if there was a letter sent by the Virrey of Nueva España in 1593, but the Council of Indias started to work with it in 1554, and the date of the bundle will be 1554. That's the reason of your procedure. That is a logical way to be sure or to try to find information. We say always the same. Try some years before and some years later.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's all the questions. Unless I've missed any, you could quickly write them in the chat again.
Someone asked about the envío telemático.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay. So I'm going to screen share again. Y'all are probably getting tired of me switching back and forth. But if you click on the constellation mark, let's say, the V it'll have links to share things to Twitter, Facebook, and email. And Antonio, can you send images through that interface, or?
I think so.
Okay.
Because you can send to your notepad a signature or an image.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, try that. Maybe you can also share an image.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Let's go back to good old Indifferente.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it looks like you can send an image at a time,
Yes.
but you can't do a range of images.
I have to say you that you did a very nice explanation of how to find the signatures. So the little problems from PARES about the FOL, just to write an F, not to write the espacio, sorry, I don't remember the word. So these kind of things. And the problem of the digital, also the digitized image or not. So this question of the registry books, that really all of them are with digital image. Also, PARES don't allow you to see the sign, the symbol of digitized image. The agenda, I try to do that, is very useful in case you want to keep the site where you were working on. For example, you are working with this book number 10. You're reading, looking for information, you are at the site 100. You can send that image to your agenda, your notepad, and so it will be saved in your notepad with, I think that with you can type the number of the site or the site in which you are. So you can continue tomorrow instead of writing on a paper. That was the old version, the old way to keep that information.
I guess many people asked when they registered for the workshop, they had questions about obtaining copies and things, which I guess are complicated right now. But in general, where can people, if people want to get in touch with the archive, who should they email? What's the best email address?
Always our reference department, the AGI number 2. So the normal email that we use always. I type okay. It to you. I think we're here to listen what Scott wanted to explain to talk about it, but I'm glad to solve all the questions that you have. Anyway,
I'm so glad you were able to attend, Antonio. Thank you for.
I told you at the beginning, I wanted to listen to your point of view.
Thank you. Well, we have over 60 people tuned in, so that was, okay.
There you are, yes. So now we are trying to start again with our work, but it's not easy. We're trying to open the research room. You're trying to continue with the copy service. It's not easy in this situation of COVID.
Yeah.
I wanted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to had some ideas or questions from your explanation. Well, the main one was this of how to find information, how to use the registry books, all the books that we have. We are working on them. So this example of Mexico 188 is because where you can find the information of each reference inside the book. is just an exception. So most of the books still are in the other way. We are working on that, but we need many years to get that.
Yeah.
So from your point of view, you just talk a little about that. The problem of authorities. Search for an authority. You said that was you find more information about European authorities, for example, that from Archivo de Indias. How important do you find this kind of search? So it is really useful to have a good index of authorities.
I have turned up new things that I hadn't found before using authorities, but I view it as a secondary resource to search and the inventario, to be honest.
Okay, because that's our perception. So we had that idea that we now in each new description we have to identify the authorities. But the procedure is really difficult because we have to define previously the authorities and to fill in the PARES with all the information of those authorities. And the problem is that in every new version of PARES and any new version of archival description, we had to start again. So it is really a very difficult way of working. I mean, we feel sometimes like Penelope with doing and undoing every day the thing, no? But so I had the idea that authority was not so useful. So better to explain how to use the sections and to look inside the numbers. But I wanted to also to see your point of view.
Yeah, I don't want to cut you off, but I did want to say to everyone, I am working on a written version of this talk that will appear on my website. I'll send it to the email list when it is done. And also, like I said, the Inventario Dinámico on my site will increase in sophistication. My wife is helping me to do some light coding that'll make it easier to look at. But that'll continue to get better. And as people slowly filter out, thank you so much for coming. Do we have any, Antonio, did you have any questions, or do we have any final questions from the room?
No, please, that was everything that I wanted to ask you or to tell you. Thank you anyway.
Okay. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And this session has been recorded, so I will figure out how to put it on YouTube, and I'll share a link with all the with everyone who signed up for the workshop, and that will be then available as the resource. And I'll also share a link with Scott's Inventario Dinámico and his how-to guide as well. And I'll also share the email for the AGI reference if you have other questions, bearing in mind everyone's working at home at the moment and answers maybe, slower than normal. And, this has been really successful, and I hope that maybe we can do something again later this summer, later this year. If you have any interest, or if there's a specific topic you have in mind for another workshop, let me know, and maybe we can organize something again as well.
Yeah, and my email address is available on my site, and if you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to me. It's not like we're getting a lot of department camaraderie right now, so I certainly wouldn't mind an email from any of you guys.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, great.
Okay, I am going to step away, but it was a pleasure being with you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Antonio, and everyone for coming. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Okay.